So thanks for joining me. Would you like to introduce yourself to everyone, Cooper?
Sure, Sam. So my name is Cooper Quinn. I'm the current president of the North Shore Mountain Bike Association, the NSMBA, and then as well, kind of in the outdoor rec world, I also sit on the board of directors for the Outdoor Recreation Council of BC. But primarily for this, I think we're chatting NSMBA stuff.
So my name's Sam. I'm a mechanic, and I'm also the social media coordinator over at Steed Cycles. This is the first in hopefully a few of our podcasts here. Talking to Cooper today about the NSMBA, how the whole COVID-19 thing is affecting them and the work they do. But first I want to talk to Cooper just a little bit about himself. So just tell us about yourself. Where are you from originally?
Yeah, so I'm originally from Jackson Hole, Wyoming. I moved up here in 2004 to go to school. So I went to Simon Fraser University. And I mean, honestly, the reason I picked this location for my university was I picked school based on where I could ski and ride my bike.
Seems like a pretty familiar story. I kind of moved here myself, for the riding. That's, what I've based most of my decisions in life on. And yeah, once you get here, it's pretty easy to get involved in the scene. Everyone here is so passionate about it, which is really cool.
Yeah, it's everyone who's involved, and that's one of the things I really love about the association is that everyone who's involved in it, volunteers or paid employees, it's a passion project, and so everybody cares a lot, and that has its own set of challenges associated with it because everyone does care so much, but everyone's coming at it from a good place.
Mm-hmm. That's super cool. That's good to know. So what were your first thoughts when you got to the North Shore? What did you think about the trails and stuff like that?
My first ride on the shore would have been on a trip back from Whistler in probably 2001 or 2002. It's somewhere in there. And so we're coming back from Whistler, and it was right during the heyday of CBC, really. So maybe it was a little bit later. Maybe it was 2003, somewhere in there. But at any rate, so rode CBC, Corkscrew, Pingu, Pangor, and then went over to the Cove when the Cove was in the Cove, and stopped by the shop there, and then went dirt jumping at Myrtle, and was like, wow, that was amazing. And then continued on south back home, and a couple of years later was kind of looking at schools and stuff like that, and so took another trip to Whistler, and then checked out Simon Fraser on the way home and stuff. But then, so once I got here, started exploring more of the shore, and it was kind of 2004, 2005, and there's so much woodwork, and it was kind of the shore as the shore had been portrayed in all the videos I'd seen and everything like that. And I loved it.
Yeah.
It was a very different style of riding, but I loved it, and the bikes at the time were well suited for it.
Mm-hmm. High bottom brackets, steep head angle.
Exactly. Yeah, the bottom bracket, 14-inch bottom brackets and stuff like that.
Yeah, for sure.
Flat pedals everywhere.
Man, I really liked it when I first got here because, having ridden in a bunch of different places around the world, you kind of see the way people have tried to imitate the riding here with skinnies and ladder bridges and stuff, and a lot of times it just doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. But you come ride here, you ride something like CBC or Boogeyman, you're like, okay, I get it, like this makes sense.
Yeah, it's pretty neat, and that's part of the weight, I guess, that I feel on my shoulders sometimes is the legacy that's here and the history that's here. And you can go across the world to kind of wherever you're from, and or whatever bike park you're in, and they have some trail somewhere that's got a bunch of air quotes North Shore features on it, and it's a bunch of probably polished 2x4s, but it's elevated woodwork, and that's the legacy that we have. And right now it's trying to balance that legacy and make sure that we maintain that, because there is still a lot of people that want to ride that kind of woodwork and those kinds of features with modern bikes, modern riders, modern trail design and stuff like that, and trying to make sure we keep our history alive as well as pushing the sport forward is a challenge.
Definitely. I've heard a lot of people talk about kind of dumbing down the shore, and I definitely don't want to accuse you guys of doing that, for sure, because I got here and there's a lot of stuff that's to me, it's still pretty gnarly, I feel like yeah, there are probably some sacrificial trails out there, but there's still, like, you know, you go up from, you could ride, you know, Bookless, Grannies, Upper Crippler, and they're pretty wild still.
Yeah, I mean, you know, like over the past, so from 2011 or so, 2010 onwards, there was a number of trails that the association ultimately took, and did make easier. And you know, a lot of the Lower Frome area and some of the stuff on Seymour as well. There was a few trails that did definitely become just easier, and part of that was because the membership, through surveys and through actual data, had identified, and the association had identified, the lack of progression in our trail network as a real problem. And you know, yes, it was fine in 1998 or 2000 to just throw yourself into the deep end, but we've realized that there's better ways to do these things now. And so some of those trails became easier, but that was for the health of the trail network as a whole. And part of the challenge there is that we're not blessed with some of the things that other associations have the luxury of doing, like building a bunch of new trails. We're super topographically confined, or geographically confined, based on our land managers. We're very topographically combined in that our whole area is super steep and super rugged. And we just ultimately don't have the space and terrain to build a bunch of new easy trails. So what was done was taking some of the old trails and making them different. But I do take exception now to some of when people tend to throw dumbing down the shore around sometimes these days, because just because trails are different doesn't necessarily mean they are hard or dumbed down or less hard or anything like that. And what I find a lot of is people have latched on to a particular variation of a specific trail, and that to them is the best variation of that trail, and anything else is sacrilege. And unfortunately, the only thing that is constant in the trails world is change. And whether you liked Ned's when it was a loamer, or you like Ned's now, Ned's won't be the same in 15 years. And there's nothing I can do about that.
Yeah, it's part of the forest. The forest is going to reclaim it, or, you know, the trail's going to get, you know, ridden a lot and rutted out. It's, you know, just part of what happens, is part of the natural evolution of it, I guess.
Totally. And the other challenge here is, you know, we have, if you've ever been here in the winter, is a little bit of water on the trails. And so that's a huge challenge for us. And so all these kind of factors combine to me. Yeah, I struggle when people say we've dumbed down trails, but at the end of the day, I can see where some of that comes from. But I think that the progression exists if they're out there to look for it. And as you point out, there's plenty of challenging trails out there.
Oh yeah, for sure. I've definitely tried to ride a few of them.
Interpretive forest walks are sometimes lovely to take your bike on.
Yeah, exactly. You probably get asked this one a bit. What's your favorite trail?
A bit like when people ask what's my favorite whiskey. It depends on what day of the week it is and what the weather's like, and what, you know, these days it depends a lot on what bike I'm on. You know, I live at the bottom of Seymour here, so my go-to is generally Seymour, just because I can pedal out my front door to it. If I had to pick a trail on Seymour, if I had to pick a lap on Seymour, I'd be up through the Blair Range, Academy, Penny or RT Connector, Penny Lane, Good Sir Martin, all the way up to top, Corkscrew, Pingu, Boogeyman. Splitting hairs between Boogeyman and Boogie Nights, but one of those two. And then over and out through back down through the Blair Range. Nice. Would be kind of, that'd be my, if I just had one quick lap to do, it'd be a Boogeyman lap.
That's a good one. I think Boogeyman's probably one of my favorite trails right now as well.
It's so fun. I love that one. And there's so much history on that trail too. If you just look left and right and stuff like that, what is this giant thing that I've never stopped and actually noticed?
Yeah, you're too focused on riding the other technical thing in front of you.
Exactly. People need to get out and hike the trails more. Sometimes I think the amount of stuff you see on foot that you don't notice when you're riding, trying not to die, is cool.
I've actually been meaning to get out and try to hike Flying Circus at some point.
Very worthwhile. Very, very worthwhile. It's just, you look, especially at the first couple of features, and you're just like, what on earth was Dan thinking? This is insane. And then there's a few low-key people I know kicking around that, they rode all of the circus, and it just immediately puts them up on a pedestal to me because it's nuts.
Did you have you ever met Kim, the owner of Steed?
Yeah.
Yeah, good guy. He's been around since those days. And have you ever seen the cranked videos and stuff of
Oh yeah. Yes,
so cool.
Kim's in a bunch of those, and it's funny to see Kim then versus Kim now. And I'm in some ways, I have to laugh at my history there too, where I look at myself now, and as we segue slowly or towards COVID-19 talk, I'm spending most of my time on my gravel bike right now, and like when I moved up here, I was like roach shorts and 46 tooth front chainring and jeans, hiking up from, and now I haven't owned a downhill bike in a decade and pedal everywhere. And Kim's gone from those North Shore Extreme videos to I don't think I'd want to challenge that guy to a pedaling competition.
No, I've done it many times, and I never win.
No, I don't think there's a lot of ways to win. But he's another one of those. There's a bunch of other North Shore guys kind of in that same ilk too, where they learned to ride all of this stuff on bikes that were, let's be honest, they were terrible. And so now that they have good bikes under them, that they're unstoppable.
So with COVID-19, and so I've seen the NSMBA Instagram page and all that stuff. So would you mind just kind of like talking about the recommendations that you guys are making for people to ride right now?
For sure. And, I point out to people that we're talking here on Good Friday, April 10th, because, and I say that because I think this is an incredibly fluid situation, and it evolves day to day, really. And so what we're trying to do is balance the best interests of us and the mental health of our community and membership, as well as really just trying to follow what the provincial guidelines are, and fall in line behind Dr. Henry and Dr. Tam at the federal level. And so our guidelines at this point in time are ultimately to stay local. So ride the closest mountain to you, preferably if because of all the issues we're seeing at the parking lots and grouping up and stuff like that. Don't drive there if you don't have to. And only ride with members of your own immediate household. And then on your trail choice, it's play it safe. I think the last place you want to be right now is in the hospital. And accidents happen. It's part of our sport. But trying to lower that risk, the incidence of risk is quite high in mountain biking. So anything you can do to lower that, and that's just riding a little bit more relaxed, slowing it down a little bit, not being in a hurry to get anywhere. Maybe that thing you ride 75% of the time, maybe don't ride it right now, because there's two aspects of, I think, not wanting to be in the hospital system. It's three. A, you don't want to be there at the best of times. B, right now it's not a great place to be, because it's where's the highest incidence of COVID-19 kicking around, probably in the hospital system. And I think they've got it fairly set up such that you're not likely to catch it there, but you're probably more likely to catch it there than you are walking down the street. And B, our healthcare professionals need all the rest. They need all the PPE. They need all the beds and everything like that they can. And so everything we can do to stay out of there right now is good. So everyone's got to find their own personal risk tolerance level. And if you're comfortable going out and riding Expresso, cool, go for it. If you're comfortable riding Executioner, cool, go for it. Just be careful. Myself personally, as I said, I'm spending most of my time on my gravel bike right now, and it's not that that's without risk, but there's risk and hazard, and risk is the chances of something happening, basically, and the consequence is what's going to happen if you encounter that risk. And on my gravel bike, I figure most of the time, if I fall off on that thing, I'm going to skin myself up. Whereas on my mountain bike, I tend to break wrists or blow shoulders up or do things like that. And those are things that put me in the hospital. Yeah. So we're just trying to follow the provincial guidelines, and just as that changes day to day to day. But ultimately, it's ride very safely, ride only with members in your immediate household, and try not to drive to the trailhead right now if you can. That's where we're seeing the biggest impacts on. That's where we're going to lose our access, is those parking lot crowds and groups and photos of that getting sent to politicians and stuff like that.
Hmm. That was one thing I was going to ask you, with regard to like how they're making decisions on these kind of things. Do they have like any kind of metric, or is it just kind of based on, anecdotal evidence, people sending photos to people and stuff like that?
I think most politicians from the local level all the way up to federal are doing their level best to base their changes and policies and regulations and stuff on what the health officials and health professionals are saying. That said, all politicians are ultimately accountable to their constituencies, and if they have 40 homeowners in a 3-block radius all yelling and screaming about how many people are parking in their lawns because they want to get to the trails, they're going to do something about it. I think the reason we're still seeing trail access open is because our health professionals are still saying, people need to get outside and people need to exercise.
Mm-hmm.
Is Dr. Henry thinking of mountain biking on the North Shore when she says go for a bike ride? Let's be honest, probably not.
Mm-hmm.
But they are still saying, get out there, be active. Mental health is going to be huge as we go through this continued lockdown. So I think it's a combination of both, in that I do think that most politicians are well-meaning enough at this point in the pandemic here to be trying to follow the health recommendations. But again, they are ultimately accountable to the people that live in their communities, and they will answer to them in some ways. And we see both of those effects, I think.
Yeah. It's a pretty difficult situation to navigate, I guess. The outdoors is a big part of the culture here, getting out in the mountains. And, for me, that's why I came here. And I'm sure that's why a lot of people choose to live on the North Shore.
Yeah, it's why a significant portion of the DNV residents live within the DNV and on the shore as well. And even if you don't live on the shore, you maybe picked your place in Burnaby or in Coquitlam or in the Fraser Valley because it's access to recreation and trails. It's a huge component of it, and then I would hate to lose that. And again, I think politicians understand that.
For sure.
So yeah, recreate in your own community, I think, is one of the biggest things. We're with the weekends, what we've seen is people traveling to recreate, and that's a challenge. But as a slight bit of evidence too, which is to your anecdote point earlier, what we see on the internet is maybe not always reality. And there's a certain community somewhere between the North Shore and Whistler that has been very upset about all the people coming to ride their trails lately. And what the Trail Forks data actually shows is that there's less people than normal traveling to ride there, and there's 2 times the amount of locals riding on the trails right now that are normally riding there. So what Squamish, we'll call it, is actually seeing, and what the real data reflects, are 2 different things. And I think we see that here on the shore, where there's a lot of people very concerned about how busy the trailheads are and all of these things, and they were really busy last year too.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember the Braemar looking pretty busy all year round last year from about this time. So, and
exactly, there is anecdotes and there is some data, but there's not a lot of real hard data for people to make these kinds of decisions on. We just have to do our best, and everyone's trying. I'm really glad I'm not in a position where I have to make decisions like any of the actual elected officials are having to make, because there's trade-offs every single way. Because if they close access to the forests, ultimately that's going to have impacts on people's mental health, and that has real life concerns. People need to relax and be kind to each other out there and realize that we're all in the same boat here.
For sure.
That, yeah, everyone is anxious, everyone is stressed, everyone's trying to do their best.
I've admittedly been a little bit kind of cautious to go riding with all of my housemates, because if we all get out on the trails, that's 5 of us together, and it looks like a big group, but like you say, we live together. So
totally. And if you can feel like you can get out there and be safe enough, then by all means. But again, some of it's just optics for yourself as well. And is it worth getting yelled at by somebody? Maybe not.
Honestly, I quite enjoy riding on my own anyway. So
I do a lot of my riding on my own, and I'm a social creature, but a lot of my riding is just where I can fit it in. And So there's only so many people that can go riding with like 3 minutes warning. And
Yeah.
so I just tend to pop out on the trails. And if I run into people, great. And if I don't, I quite like being out there by myself and just pedaling.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of part of the nice thing of being a mountain biker, right? Sometimes it's nice to just get into the forest and not see anyone else.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's plenty of, I think even with the busy trails, and there's plenty of spaces to do that.
What has changed for you guys in the last kind of month or so?
Revenue, as I'm sure you guys have seen as well. We're lucky in that a lot of our sponsors had already paid their 2020 bills going into it, I think, because what we're seeing is that some of the people who had committed to 2020 sponsorships and hadn't paid yet are now, they're in a tough spot. And, as much as they want to support us, they might not be able to. And sure, they signed a contract, but it's not something I'm going to hold their, I'm not, what am I going to do? I want to work with them. And so revenue is definitely down fairly significantly. So we've had to adjust our budget quite a bit already. We're in a fairly good space in that I think we can do that. And part of the way we can do that as well is that the areas that we can do trail work right now are fairly restricted as well. Some of our land managers have basically cut us back to emergency only trail work. Imminent safety related trail work. And so that means ultimately we're spending less money on the trail crew and stuff. So that kind of trims some of our budget as well. And then, the other big impact we're seeing is that we can't have any of our events. We're ultimately a community-based organization that runs events, and be that 5-person volunteer trail days with some of our sponsors, be that the Fivers of, 200 people, or the season opener party that we had planned. We can't do any of that. I think that's, the revenue is one thing. The organization will survive. We're fine. But I think that's where we're kind of feeling it the most, is that community feel and that social interaction and all of those events that really come together to make the association what it is. And unfortunately, we will also see the impacts of that, the lack of that volunteerism and volunteer engagement on the trails, because we can't do all of the work that we want to do. The majority of our trail work is not the trail crew, it is volunteer hours. And that's not really happening right now in a significant way. A lot of our builders are out there on their own time, just plugging away at little projects here and there, but it's no longer a builder plus 4 or 5 other people. And so it just really limits the amount of work they can do.
I noticed that we were scheduled to have a trail day today on Pennzoil.
Yeah, exactly. And that's not happening, and the trails are very, very busy out there. So there will be real impacts on this to the trails, and we will have to do some catch-up work on the other side. But again, it's not something I'm stressed about or concerned about. It's just something that we will have to deal with when the time comes. And I think the other thing I'd like to say too is that one of the things we're seeing right now is there's a lot of people out there who maybe have more time on their hands, or maybe don't feel like they should be riding bikes, or are just looking for something to do, and they're out doing trail work. And these people are very well meaning, and I love the volunteer spirit and everything, but ultimately a lot of the work we're seeing out there is not helpful. And our builders are having to go and undo work that's being done by people who are, again, they're trying to be helpful generally. And I love that. But unfortunately, now is not the time to go do a bunch of volunteer trail work. It's not the time to go build that jump in the middle of a trail. It's not the time to go add some berms to boundary. True story.
Okay, interesting.
So, and we don't have our trail crew out there or anything, which is usually kind of our eyes on the ground to go chat with these people and just to be like, hey, look, love the enthusiasm. Let's try to direct this in a good way. So I think there are things that if people are desperately looking for stuff to do out there on the trails, they can do. We can always be clearing drains and stuff like that. But another big one is invasive species. Educate yourself a little bit around what English holly and some of the others look like, and drag some of that out of the trails. That's always work we can do. That's always appreciated. Please don't go build that jump or that berm. And we will harness your volunteer spirit to rebuild the trails here. Yeah,
I did see a whole ton of leaf litter on Upper Oil Can as I went past the other day. So if
perfect, go rake it. But yeah, it's one of those, and that's something I know other associations are seeing as well, is just a significant rise in unauthorized trail work, and that is a real challenge for all associations because, again, unfortunately, it just means that a lot of times those builders have to go, and a lot of them are volunteers, volunteer their own time to undo somebody else's work instead of working on the project that they wanted to work on.
So I probably know the answer to this already, but how can we as the public, as a community, kind of help support the NSMBA right now?
I hate to say it's as simple as, well, it's one, volunteering in a good way, as we kind of just chatted about there. Being a good ambassador to the sport of mountain biking and realizing that as soon as you hop on your bike and roll down the driveway or throw your bike on the back of your car, you are an immediately identifiable user group. And if you go blasting past some, stroller in a crosswalk, they see your mountain bike and they realize that you're a mountain biker. You park in a bad way, you're a mountain biker. You go blasting by someone on the trails, you're a mountain biker. And whether justified or not, we're just more visible. So as soon as you put that bike on, you're an ambassador. And if we want to maintain access through these challenging times, be on your best behavior and be kind and be courteous to everyone you see out there. And then ultimately, dollars, unfortunately, it's kind of that simple. We, like I said, we're in a fairly good place, but I'd like to keep all of our employees doing the best work that we can do through these times. And so I realize these are tough times for everyone from sponsors to individuals, but if you've got an extra $5, $10, $20 or whatever, like that's kind of what we need right now because we can't use your volunteer hours.
My housemates all bought NSMBA memberships this year because they were hoping to race the fivers. Obviously, that's not going to happen.
We'll see. They're canceled through the end of May right now. We're still hopeful that there will be some fivers, and we're trying to work on some contingency plans for later in the year. So we'll see. As we talked about, it's an ever moving target, but yeah. So yeah, people can buy memberships. That's always a huge one, and that those dollars go straight to keeping everything moving as well.
Well, hopefully when all this, when we can get together again, hopefully we'll get, a few more volunteers out.
I hope so. And yeah, certainly part of our plans will be to have some big community events to put everyone together when we can and when that's actually recommended from the provincial health officials, and not before that point in time. But yeah, getting everyone out there back again, I think will make everybody really happy, and we can continue to do the work that we were doing. We've got some big plans and some big projects that we were starting to talk about with a couple of different land managers, but everything's just on hold right now. And, all of the land managers are going to see significant changes to their budgets as well. So we just don't know what that looks like.
Have you guys seen like a lot of big changes in other parts of the bike industry that you might be in contact with?
So you broke up just a tiny bit there, but some big changes in the bike. I'll let you say that question again.
Have you seen any kind of changes in the bike industry, with other businesses that you guys might be in contact with?
From the COVID stuff, I think everyone is dialing budgets back aggressively, and that's from big OEMs to little parts suppliers and to local bike shops as well, as I'm sure you're acutely aware. The revenue impacts of this slowdown are from top to bottom, and that starts at the individual level where people are unemployed or underemployed and can no longer purchase all of the parts that they want to. And you guys then don't sell as much, you're not buying as much, it goes all the way up. And, the big companies, be it big bike companies or big component manufacturers, whatever it happens to be, they're all very aware of that. And so I've dialed everything back a lot straight out of the gate. Like I said, I think we're lucky in that we got a lot of our sponsors in already and committed and paid. But I think the impacts of this for us will continue well into the next year or two as well.
It's been a pretty interesting one for us as a bike shop. Our kind of captive audience has changed a little bit almost because we've been pretty busy with commuters and e-bikes and people just kind of wanting to get a bike to get out of the house now because everybody retired at once almost, you know?
Well, anecdotally, one of the things I think I'm seeing, and other people have mentioned this as well, but a lot of people, and this plays into the risk assessment stuff we were talking about earlier, but I'm seeing a lot of people out there on bikes that aren't new and with equipment that looks like maybe they haven't ridden in the past 5 or 6 or 7 or 10 years, and they decided to pull the bike out because that's what they can do, and they're up there riding on the shore. And that's a little bit nerve-wracking to me for all of the risk management reasons we talked about. But then the other aspect too is, as you're saying, commuting wise and everything, people I think have realized that bike commuting solves some of the concerns people have with public transit and everything right now. So I'm hopeful that on the backside of all of this, that maybe society's learned something and we can do a little better. And we see more bike commuters year round and stuff like that. I love that if that's one of the outcomes here. Sure. And so it's encouraging to me to hear that people are pulling old bikes out to go commuting on and to get some exercise on. I love that.
I feel pretty fortunate to be, in the industry that I'm in. We're doing okay. I'm pretty happy that I'm, working in arguably one of the better bike shops around. I kind of have to say that, but yeah, I really like it. And
I don't pick favorites.
That's fair. And yeah, our customers have been really understanding of this whole thing. Everything's taking us a lot longer these days, and we have to disinfect every bike that comes in and fully clean it before we can do any work at all. And people have just been pretty understanding of everything that we're doing for them, which is cool. It's great.
Yeah, and I think again that's one of the things that it does make me hopeful here, is that we are seeing most people just really trying to do their best and figure out how to make things work. And a lot of times that comes at personal expense to them in some way, shape, or form, but they're willing to make that sacrifice. And that's a lesson I hope we can all retain.
Yeah, for sure. It's definitely brought out the best in some people, which is really cool.
Yeah, I think our takeaways are it's follow the provincial health guidelines and support local businesses. We last night, we tend to do takeout one night a week. We did delivery last night, and we literally picked it based on a restaurant that we wanted to make sure, not somewhere we usually get takeout from, but based on a restaurant that we wanted to make sure survived through this, and we know they're struggling. And so making choices like that in your day-to-day life right now, and then, like I said, there's very real budget implications for this for us as an association as well. So we'd love to see support from you as you can. And if you're finding solace in the trails and calm in the trails, and that's part of how you're surviving this, please support us. Thank you.
Cool, for sure.
Right on, Sam. Well, thanks for the time, and we'll talk to you soon.
Yeah, thank you for that.